Hello, hello, everybody. It's Darshana Avila here, and it is the 17th day of Power to the P, my month of mindful masturbation for February. And it's been a ride, seriously, sharing all of this with you and just committing to this practice myself. Today was a really good one, and I'm actually delighted that I get to come and talk about it because I love talking about sex in all of its forms, hence this video blog and the work that I do in the world. And it's it's really important to me. It was a big inspiration behind this project in general that we are normalizing these conversations, taking it out of the shadows, out of the closets, because most of us are masturbating or having partnered sex or whatever it is at a certain age and stage of our lives, or we have desires, impulses, and the fact that we don't really have a big cultural context for talking about this freely is part of what keeps us in these shame spirals and keeps us thinking that there is something wrong with us, or what we're interested in is really far from the norm, or what's happening in our bodies is strange or just negative in any which way. And as a somatic sex educator, as a coach, as a practitioner, I've seen many, many bodies and gotten to bear witness to many, many hearts and souls, and normalizing our experiences is probably the best medicine that any of us could take a dose of. So today, it's raining outside, I'm fresh out of the shower, wet is the theme for me today. I want to talk about ejaculation. And I want to talk specifically about ejaculation for those of us who have vulvas. And this is a topic that definitely has a lot of confusion and a lot of shame associated with it. And there is a piece of me that feels a little more hesitancy speaking candidly about this than some of the other things I've shared over the course of the last 2.5 weeks. And yet I'm going to do it anyway. So my journey with ejaculation began when a new lover that I met probably, I don't know if I had to guesstimate, this was 6 years ago or so, give or take. And he kind of like threw down the gauntlet and said to me, I'm going to make you squirt. And I'm like, yeah, right. I don't do that. I did not know my body to do that. Well, trying to make a long story short for the sake of this blog, he succeeded. And it was amazing. From one minute to the next, I'm like in a puddle of my own juices. It's like, whoa. And I continue to experience this with him, and I continue to experience this with my partner after him. And it was around that time that I started getting really curious about, well, wait a second. I want to know what this is like for myself and take this on as part of my practice. And so I began exploring. And what most of us are exploring when we are dealing with ejaculation, for those who have vulvas, is our urethral sponge, or our G-spot. And it's that little come hither motion, usually just about a fingertips distance inside of the vaginal opening, the introitus. And a lot of times the approach to stimulating this and to bringing on ejaculation, particularly in like the porn style version of things, it's very forceful and a lot of friction and like, what I found in my own solo loving was that it was really a very subtle touch. I could be very gentle with myself. It didn't require a lot of friction. What it did require was relaxation and presence. And so I have for years now been ejaculating as part of my self-pleasuring, and I have an easier time and generally more enjoyment in my solo practice than even when that happens with a lover, unless it's just a very organic or spontaneous thing. I don't want to be forced to do anything. And so in my solo pleasure practice, today ended up really juicy. I did some yoga, danced around a little bit, undressed myself slowly, and I wasn't feeling like super aroused, but I really just dropped into this deep presence with myself. My entire practice happened in front of a mirror, and I was looking as I massaged my chest and my breast and my belly, and I moved down to my inner thighs and was just playing with my vulva. And I was really fascinated by her colors. And as I began to get more aroused and more stimulated, the change of colors of these tissues and the way that they change shape and size as they engorge and fill with fluid, which is totally natural. Different secretions that our bodies make, again, totally natural. And one of those is ejaculate. It's also the urethral sponge is sometimes considered the female prostate, and men also, or those with penises and that genitalia, also have the ability to receive a lot of pleasure, and even you might have heard the term milking the prostate as something that can happen to bring forth fluid. So anyway, back to my story, because I don't want this to be too techy. I want it to stay with me. As I was just in my pleasuring and I was focused on a lot of external stimulation, and then I just really got the hit that I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be penetrated. And when I say I got the hit, it was more just like this impulse came over me, and I entered myself with my fingers, and it took practically nothing for me to then ejaculate. And it was in front of a mirror. And so I was watching as my waters came forth, and it happened several times over, and it was quite voluminous. And I went into this just beautifully ecstatic experience, very distinct from like a peak clitoral orgasm that I might get had I been using a vibrator or something, different from deep penetrative cervical contact. This has its own distinct pleasure, and it's got this very like, yum kind of feeling to it, so that when I was done, I was just laying there with these waves of pleasure, like rippling through my body and feeling super gratified. And when I got up and went into the shower afterwards, like the smile you see on my face has pretty much been there the whole entire time. Basically, it's like I just got really well fucked by myself. And I imagine a lot of you out there might know what I'm talking about when I say that. It's a very particular pleasure, a very particular satisfaction and satiation that we experience. And so I wanted to just let you know that that was part of my morning, and to talk about it as candidly as I've talked to you about every other facet of this journey or any other topic that we might land on. I got a reflection from a friend yesterday that really drove that piece home for me. And she was just celebrating my willingness to speak from my heart and speak vulnerably about a topic that, like I said, most of us are doing in some way, shape, or form, or we're thinking about it, wishing we were doing it more, wishing we were doing it less, whatever the case may be. And in our culture, we're just not talking about these things all that often. So it's part of the gift of the work that I get to do. And it's the gift that these video blogs have been for me to offer to you what I've received back by way of the messages and the reflections and the comments that you shared. It's really been a delight. And there are many more days of delight to come as we round out this month. So I look forward to hearing from you. I wish you juicy and wonderful and pleasurable experiences for yourself. And I will be back with you tomorrow. Bye.